All right, just a quick little drive this morning to get some behind the scenes work out. Oh, look, my seatbelt warning as I pull away from the house in an unsafe manner on my computer or my phone. So, trust me, it's not unsafe. There's nobody here. This place is very low key. So, I'm preparing for a big live on the Bryan Kohberger situation. And I say big because every time I think I've got nothing to say, new documents come out, and the documents are getting crazier and crazier. There's a particular argument going on about an individual by the name of Cy Ray. And it's over the possibility that the FBI and law enforcement, in the case of Bryan Kohberger, are withholding exculpatory information, meaning that they know it for a fact that information, if it was fully revealed in the court system, will show things that actually help Bryan Kohberger's case. And they're fighting desperately to make sure that information doesn't get into court. And their argument is horrendous. I mean, it literally is one of those, hey, this evidence is good enough, and we don't want the defense to be able to bring in an expert that says, that shows that it's not good enough. And in fact, I will argue, and I will tell you, reading the document by Cy Ray's argument was almost literally this. Not only is my statement on behalf of the defense not just two experts fighting, but I am the fucking expert. That's what his statement basically is. He's like, look, this isn't an issue of the defense's expert versus the prosecution's expert. I am the expert. And the reason he can claim that is Cy Ray literally wrote the fucking software. I got to stop swearing all the time. Literally wrote the software that the FBI uses and other law enforcement agencies use to manipulate and review AT&T, for example, timing advance records. This is the big issue that's going on in the fight. Now, here's the horrible thing, again, behind the scenes. Judge Hippler originally had basically ruled, I believe, that Cy Ray didn't need to come into court and therefore rejected the defense's motion to have Cy Ray testify in court about the AT&T timing advance records. Now, the reason why you're wondering why does this matter, it gets complicated. I plan to explain this all on my live on Monday. So I hope that people will tune in, and I realize hardly anybody's going to see this behind the scenes video. I will tag it up and hope that somebody actually gets a chance to see it. But what is ridiculous to me is that the judge might not allow Cy Ray to testify. Now, granted, the judge has not seen the brand new affidavit by Cy Ray that explains why Cy Ray says he needs to testify. And here's some of the big shockers of that situation. Cy Ray has apparently, according to his own affidavit, almost always been in court systems to help the prosecution in explaining timing advance records. Always. I believe this is the first time that Cy Ray, and I think he said hundreds of cases. So I'm going off of memory, but I'm gonna have the facts 100% in my live. So I believe off the top of my head, I just did this research last night, that Cy Ray has testified in hundreds of cases about the AT&T timing advance records, because literally he is the expert who knows the most about this and has written software that law enforcement agencies use. He's the guy that wrote the software, and they continue to use his software. He knows this issue like the back of his hand, and that's his argument. And his further argument is, not only have I hundreds of times testified on behalf of the prosecution, this is the first time I'm coming to ask to testify on behalf of the defense, because the law enforcement is manipulating the AT&T timing advance records, and I can prove it because I wrote the software and I know exactly how it works. And so it's a huge statement. If the judge does not allow Cy Ray, to me it shows really big shenanigans. Because this argument, the new argument that the defense is putting, the affidavit from Cy Ray, is appealing to the judge with an enormous list of his credentials, explaining huge numbers that show that Cy Ray is the expert in timing advance records. Not just a expert, but the expert. And that he's always been involved with helping the prosecution, but this time he's feeling compelled to talk to on behalf of the defense because this is shenanigans. They're trying to convict a man on absolute fabrications and withholding exculpatory information. Now, what does that mean exactly? What it means is Cy Ray lays out, and I'm going to talk about it on the live, he lays out where he can prove that the FBI and law enforcement know damn well that the data that they want to present in court, if looked at deeper, will prove the opposite of what they're saying. And they want to keep that out of the court system. They want to tell, and it's so complicated. It's so complicated because what they're trying to say is, yes, we obtained detailed information about the AT&T timing advance records, but it doesn't matter. We can just offer a simplified version to the jury, and that's enough. And then later, when a defense expert, Cy Ray, comes out and says that AT&T timing advance record actually proves the defense's position that Bryan Kohberger was not where you say he was. Now all of a sudden they're saying, well, we don't want any evidence about timing advance records. We didn't get it. Yes, you did get it. You admitted you had it. Documents show that they have it. And they're just choosing to want to say, well, technically AT&T didn't provide that information to law enforcement at the time that we were investigating Kohberger, which is somewhat true, but they got it anyways. So again, their argument is very complex, and I need to break this down for you on a live, because what they're basically saying is, at the time that Bryan Kohberger was investigated and and law enforcement went to AT&T for certain records, AT&T was not in the habit at that time of providing timing advance records to law enforcement. That part is true. But what is also true, and Cy Ray is documenting, is that the FBI obtained it anyways. That the FBI, due to their connections with AT&T and their vast resources, were able to get the AT&T timing advance records because they existed. It just wasn't the policy of AT&T to hand them over to law enforcement. But the FBI did get AT&T to turn over those timing advance records. So this manipulative tactic of telling the jury and the judge that AT&T didn't provide law enforcement that kind of data at that time as a standard procedure is true. They didn't at that time provide it as a standard procedure, but the FBI did get it. They requested it and they did get it, and Cy Ray is going to prove it, or at least he wants to be able to prove it, in a court of law, and he cites where it comes from. Now, so in other words, he did prove that the FBI had that information in a court document that's filed. But that court document is one of these kind of motions in limine, where basically the court is going to decide whether the jury gets to hear that. So it is possible, there's a scenario in which Judge Hippler is going to say, look, you made a really good case that the FBI had the timing advance records, but I don't think it's all that important, because the judge ultimately is going to get to decide what the jury gets to see. And so if the judge decides, yeah, you made a great argument. Maybe the FBI did have the timing advance records. Maybe the law enforcement did have the timing advance records. And maybe they chose to state that the fact that it wasn't standard practice for AT&T to turn over timing advance records. And that's good enough. I think I'm just going to go ahead and allow the prosecution to tell the jury that AT&T doesn't provide AT&T timing advance records as a standard course of action. And that's good enough. And that judge could allow the jury never to hear that AT&T, that the law enforcement actually did have the AT&T timing advance records. Just simply that it wasn't standard practice is what they could hear. So again, you tell me, would that be a fair trial? Would that be withholding exculpatory information if the jury's not allowed to know that the law enforcement did actually have the AT&T timing advance records, and that if they were able to see the AT&T timing advance records, it would show something different than what the prosecution is saying? Now, where does this all lead for the behind the scenes talk? And I'm going to try to hit this. Hopefully I get all of these points, because these are really good points I'm making right here. So what does that mean? If in a court of law, Judge Hippler decides that Cy Ray won't be able to testify, that it's good enough for the prosecution to just simply state that AT&T didn't don't typically hand over that kind of information, and that's going to all be all they hear. And they're not allowed to hear, because Judge Hippler rules in this favor if that happens, that the timing advance records do exist and they prove something different. If all of that happens, I believe that's a motion for an appeal. It's a motion for appeal later on. So what that means is the entire trial will happen. The jury will never know that the AT&T timing advance records could have helped exonerate their guy and shown that he couldn't have been where they said he was at the time they said he was. And they will have to wait for a conviction, guilty, for example. And after the conviction of guilty gets rendered and a sentence gets rendered perhaps, then they will be able to say, okay, by the way, we're appealing the fact that Judge Hippler didn't allow our defense expert, the expert, not a expert, the expert in AT&T timing advance records, to prove to the jury that the AT&T timing advance records proves that something completely different than what was presented in court. And so then a judge will have to review that appeal and say, oh, you're right, maybe Judge Hippler was kind of a dick. Maybe Judge Hippler should have allowed that testimony and let the jury decide about the AT&T timing advance records. So again, super confusing stuff, which is why it's hard to go over in the live. But alone, right here in the in our behind the scenes, it's taken me almost 15 minutes to explain this to you. So there's 15 minutes of my live tomorrow, which I'll try to hit a lot harder than I'm doing now. And hopefully I get all these points articulated, because I think I did a pretty good job laying that out. So anyways, check out the live. That's what I'm working on behind the scenes. That's what I'm working on today, and that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow.